Classes in session. Hey everybody, welcome to Unlearn 16 Classes in Session. We are doing Buffy, scene by scene, episode by episode. I can't even remember the words right now. Why the words aren't coming out of my
Moment by moment.
Season by season. There it is. Guys, it's been a long day. It's been a day. And I'm doing it. We are reviewing it with Stu and Stefan. Guys, you want to introduce yourselves?
Stefan, you go first.
Oh,
Stefan?
Thank you.
As usual.
Age before beauty. I understand. I am Stefan. You can find me at SJ Maroney. That's SJMARONI on Instagram. And you can also find me and Stuart along with our other Rebel crew at RWACPOD, also on Instagram, Rebel Without a Closet.
Fantastic.
You see how he refuses to call me Stuart or Stu. He just calls me my full name, like I'm in trouble, always.
Always and forever.
Your microphone's a situation today, Stu. It's like, it's got some deep sort of dulcet tones going on with some reverberation or something.
Is that better if I hold it over here?
It is better.
100%.
Yeah.
All right, I'll just hold it away from me. It's the tone of my voice.
Over there.
But like here-ish. Like in front of your mouth, but like 6 inches.
Right.
No.
Right.
Mm-hmm. All right. So my name is Stu. You can find me on TikTok at Janikon, JANIKON _ or on Instagram, where I haven't really posted anything in a very long time, but sometimes you'll hear me rant about my political beliefs in my IG stories because they last for, 24 whole hours. So I can get the hate together. Exactly.
Fantastic. Together, guys, we are doing a 7-episode series. Well, maybe a little bit more than 7 because we've broken up season 2 into 2 parts where we review every season of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And today we are starting on part 2 of season 2 because it's a big season. So This might roll into 18 parts. Who knows? But Buffy's worth it.
Buffy's worth it. She's worth it.
If anybody's worried about spoilers, it's not 1997. So pull yourself together. You should have watched it already. And now you can watch it with spoilers. It is what it is.
Can I put something out there? Because I sent this to Stuart and I don't know if he sent this to you. So my partner is watching Buffy for the very first time and knows absolutely nothing about Buffy. So I've told him he cannot listen to this until we finish season 7.
Sure.
Because he can't spoil it.
He can watch where we're at because he's in because we kind of give some.
We talk about exactly. But what he did was because he doesn't know anything about the series. When we were halfway through season 2, he made predictions on what he thinks is going to happen. Do you want to hear these predictions?
I do.
They're kind of amazing. So he says the Master won't come back, but a new one will. He says Willow and Xander will date but break up in a big fiery fight, and Buffy will have to choose between them. But the core group will be fine. He says Angel won't last much longer on the show. He said Giles will leave. Technically. He says Giles will leave and Buffy will get a new watcher. Kendra will return but die in an epic fight. He said Spike and Drew at some point, their story will have to end and move on. They'll survive but won't be a focus for much longer. He said Cordelia will probably die. He says, she should have died 10 times by now, but that could just be a running gag. They introduce new students with a new Hide My Identity storyline. And he says Buffy and her mom will get a stronger relationship, but at some point she needs to find out about the Slayer thing.
Listen, he's bang on with about 75%. I mean, he's dead off on Spike. But
and Buffy.
But bang on the and the new characters. That's kind of what I liked about Buffy is that they didn't just keep infiltrating like like there are characters, but there's the core group is the core group. That's it. You might get, one person push in, but not for long because at the end.
Well, we got Oz this season, which was
that's who saved the world.
Yep, genuinely one of my favorite characters
but
of the entire
Oz
series.
Doesn't bring his little wolfy self to the end. Stu, what do you want to say?
I just want to say that I'm pretty sure he has to have been whispered. Like, is he like talking to you in your sleep, asking you these predictions? Like, is he a soothsayer? Should I ask him to pick lottery numbers? Like, what's happening?
It's true. Is he a witch?
Yeah. Is he a witch?
I'd be fine with that because then I also get to be a witch and or a werewolf, and I am totally okay with the scenario.
I also love that Stefan believes by sleeping with Kai that he also will gain witchy powers and or a werewolf power. I'm
We
like,
keep trying.
both you and I are like, Kai's a witch. He's like, that's great. I'm a witch too now.
Yep. Yeah.
I
By
just
association.
absorb. I
Yeah.
like it. I like it.
But also like I think honestly, one of my favorite episodes is the introduction of Oz. I think I think it was so underwhelming. It was perfect.
Mhm.
Yeah, let's
Like,
start with that. Let's
yeah,
start with that because Oz is a pretty big character for lots of reasons now and then for later. Let's start with his episode and the way that how we figure out who he is and all of that.
yeah, because he comes in what like Inca Mummy Girl. Is that where we introduced to Oz? And then he's like in the background of every scene in Halloween. He's like, who is that
Halloween.
girl?
Yeah. Who's
Yeah,
that girl? I love that. I love that there's just minutes where he's very much drawn to her and he has no idea why, where she just thinks she's invisible all the time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That
And
is very cool.
he's so self-assuming. There's nothing to him. Like at the beginning, he's just this cute little dork, just in the background, just being
Yeah.
precious and amazing.
Would you call him a dork though? Because like he is a
No,
guitarist for a band.
I guess not. I
and
guess
he
not. I,
failed school.
yeah.
But he's
Okay.
smart. He failed school as like a
Fails.
genius.
Yeah. I mean, he's wicked smart, but he does fail school because he just doesn't go.
Yeah,
What he does for the show, I think, and he does it brilliantly, is everybody exists. Giles fine, but most of the characters exist at a 9 all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a high school tragedy or a I'm facing the master tragedy, it doesn't matter. Everything is at a 9. It's constantly everything is life and death for everybody
Mm-hmm.
except for Oz. Oz
yeah.
just kind of stays here. One of my favorite scenes is in The Judge, whatever that was called, Surprise,
Yep.
and they blow up the judge, and all that he's just standing there calmly saying, "Arm," right? He's just arm somebody, right? It's
It's
that.
so true.
That's his deadpan. I think the way, and everybody's like, "Why are you not freaking out?" He's like, "I am
Yeah.
inside."
I also love the fact that she's like, well, Buffy's a slayer and this and that, and there are vampires. And he goes, huh, it actually really makes sense. Like, yeah.
She's like, "Are you
Yeah.
freaking out?" He's like, "No, that kind of explains a lot."
I think you really got to see the chemistry between him and Allison Hannigan
Mhm.
in What's My Line Part 1 and Part 2. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that them building onto that and having their like history of acting together and like My Stepmother is an Alien and like having like guest stars on Roseanne, I
Yeah.
think you really see the fun they have together and how they play off each other so well. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what makes the couple it's later on so heartbreaking because you love them separately, but you also love them together. And very rarely in TV shows you get to love a couple individually
Mm-hmm.
and also together. So when they break up, you're feeling pathos for both characters. You're like,
Yeah.
oh no.
Well, because you love both those characters so much. But the good thing about it
Exactly.
is like their breakup wasn't something where you're like, you hate Willow for breaking up because you understand that there is well, in season 4, we'll talk about that eventually, but there
Yeah.
is a big change for her. And you're like, okay, it's understandable. It's not just her leaving him for Xander,
Yeah.
But
But yeah.
That.
I think that line at the end. Sorry, I have so much to say about Willow and Oz, but even that line, like later on in season 4, when there is that kind of like natural end to their relationship, when she says, "I feel like I'm going to have blue hair and be walking around Istanbul or Prague rather,
Pumping.
and run into you, and it will just be us, like Oz and Willow again," and it's just so heartbreaking because you're like, they love each other so, at such a deep level,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like wrong time, wrong place, wrong person,
Yeah.
and but it doesn't like dissipate the love that they have, that bond they share.
Which
But
also,
What's My Line Part 1 and Part 2 is like great Oz Willow building.
oh
Well,
yeah,
their
and their
soulmates.
connection, 100%, because their connection builds throughout the comics as well. There's this whole series or a season that's based around Willow and Oz as well that is so well done, and it's very
Mhm.
that just Oz is such a perfect, well-rounded character. He just completely rounds out this entire group so well because
Yeah.
you're right, everyone's at a 9, but he grounds
Mhm.
them so well, and he brings that sort of sarcastic sort of, okay, well, here we go. Like he's just such an excellent character. He's such a great contrast to Xander, and an even more larger contrast to Angel and Spike, like of the men in the group.
Even also too, like even when he does like approach a 6, when he like throws the urn against the wall,
Oh
because
yeah.
like
Right.
it's never more than the character. It makes sense for the character. He never overly like
Yeah.
freaks out. You have Willow where she's trying to like confess her feelings to him, and he's like, I'm going through changes, and she's like, me too. And he's like and he's like turning and transforming into a werewolf, and and it was just like, it's just so perfect to have this very calm, like very grounded, very soulful, wise character have this monster he can't control inside of him.
There it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's perfect, right? That's the perfection of his character. The
Yeah.
perfection of his character is the contrast, not even between the other guys, but between himself.
Yeah.
Between And I think the contrast, if we're going to talk about metaphorically, is the fact that nobody can be, if you're going to be that zen all the time and that calm, cool, collected guy, you have to have a side
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
is a werewolf.
A wild side.
Otherwise, you're not a person anymore. You
Mhm.
have to have that. I love his origin story too. Like, I mean, probably my favorite parts about these different people is how they get their power, what draws it to them, how do they, you know what I mean? And the fact that his cousin bites him and he calls up and he's like, so Jordy, I'm curious, what's going on with him lately? He's like, uh-huh. How long's that been going on? Like, again, super calm.
So
There's a
It's like,
baby werewolf in the family that bit him, and now it's no nefarious big thing. And I think that also speaks to the fact that that's who he is. It comes from his family. That's just a part of his character.
it seems like the only time he ever shows fear or like just like the fear or being afraid is when he thinks he's hurt someone else. Like when
Yeah,
he thinks the wolf, he hasn't controlled his wolf enough and he thinks
yeah.
that he's hurt someone, that's when you
Mhm.
see him really panic. But as a character, he seems so zen with himself and zen around everyone else. It's great that that is his biggest thing of like, I don't want to hurt others and I definitely don't want to hurt Willow. And I love that.
can we? I'm sorry. There's like so many things to talk about in these like the What's My Line episode through to Ted, and like I
God,
know
Ted.
people are not a fan of that episode. I
Absolutely not.
love that
Ted
episode.
with John Ritter?
How about it?
Yeah.
Yeah. How about a game of Parcheesi, Buffy? Like they both had the stomach flu filming that. They both were so sick
Oh, I didn't know
filming
that.
that episode that
Really?
like they're sweating. Like if you notice them, they all have this like gross sheen on their face, and they both had like he had the stomach flu, she had the stomach flu right after, and they're trying into this like emotional fight scene, just jostling around. That like there is such like because you had right before What's My Line, you had like Dark Age with Jenny Calendar being possessed and having Giles' backstory, which is a great
Mhm.
one. You have the
Right.
So
comedic
good.
timing of the oh god, the code of what's the assassin's name?
The
Um,
what?
the
What you?
assassins. The
Oh,
order.
the nut of three, the Order of Chai. Oh,
Yeah,
I can't
nope. The
remember.
time.
Order of. Continue. I will figure it
Yeah.
out.
So it's like the order of assassins after her with the bug man, and the psycho cop. Um, you had Then you had Ted, and it's just this really great string of episodes. And then you have Bad Eggs, which I will say like is not a great episode, with the possession weird alien things. But
Order of
then you had
Taraka.
Surprise,
There we go.
Order of
Order of
Taraka,
Taraka.
yes.
Yeah.
But like you had all of these really really great like bad guys, and
Yeah.
to have Ted, like it's just like the man just didn't want to die, he wanted to keep his wife alive, which is somehow more terrifying than every monster that she has ever fought.
Yep.
Well, I think that becomes a part of the show as well. And I'm not going to give anything away when we get to like season 5 and stuff. But when they slide in real life,
Mhm.
right? Like I realize he's a robot. I realize, I mean, all of that. But it's still the concept and the underpinning of it is our inhumanity or our selfish natures. And when you slide that in amidst all the other monsters and the snakes and the whatever, it does creep you out the most because you know there's somebody out there okay, fine, maybe not building robots, but they're sure as hell trying to figure out, guys, we're up against a government right now. How do we get back to 1957?
Yeah.
I
Yep.
think we're very much living in it. You know what I mean? Like he wants his life a certain way, but it's not just because he wants a wife, it's because he wants exactly what he had and made him feel comfortable. And I think he gets to be symbolic of that in a pretty devious way, because that comes off with other characters too.
Oh
But
yeah. It's definitely not the first time we're going to see robots introduced into this reality and play a huge part in all the characters' lives.
yeah,
But I will say that like one thing I really really loved about season two was the character development, like the backstories
Mm.
given. So
yeah,
in Band Candy with Joyce and Giles, and seeing
love it.
what they would have been like as teenagers, even the
Yeah,
Principal Snyder having his
yeah,
moment. We have more Spike and Drusilla. We have Angel and his backstory coming through. Like all these huge moments. Just Ripper in general, like Ethan
yeah.
Rain,
I
Ripper.
would have loved
Like
that more. Yeah.
God, it was
And
so
that's
good.
actually my biggest, not my biggest, but one of my disappointments. I thought Ethan Rain could have been a more consistent pain in the ass.
Yeah.
I feel as though he could have come back in different incarnations at different times. I know he did a few times, but
Mhm.
I still say he's kind of very much Lex Luthor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sorry for this big comparison, but he's not a
Like
monster. He's not. You know what I mean? He's the guy that likes chaos. He's the guy that wants to throw a monkey in the wrench. Like he's a guy that likes that wants to push all those envelopes because he knows where people are necessarily pushed to anyways. And I think they could have used him differently in different
well,
seasons.
and I wonder if and stop me because I have a question about this, because one character that makes absolutely no sense, and we don't get a backstory because they don't utilize them in Angel because that actor just wasn't available, is Whistler. Whistler shows up at
Oh,
the
I
end of
know.
season two, and he
Just
is
comes in, gone.
useless. And I
Yeah,
thought, oh, maybe this is a character that's going to progress in Buffy. No, he literally just is there for that moment to be sort of like
yeah,
the with the Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then just
and
disappears.
then vanish.
And then I wonder, like, maybe that was a point where Ethan Rain should have taken that, like, maybe with some clever writing, Ethan Rain could have been
Yeah,
that character,
and I
connecting the
think
two.
he's the tie to the Oracle, right? The Oracles or whatever. And then
Yeah.
there's some offset. I don't think they ever developed that as well as they should either in Angel.
No, not really.
Stu.
I I really did like though because they bring him in 3 seasons. So they bring him in twice in season 2, once for Band Candy in season 3, and a new man, which I love that episode,
Oh,
in
it's my
season
favorite. One of
4.
my
So
favorites. I
fun.
have
That Jane Espenson, who kind of commented on Giles and Ethan's relationship, basically said she wrote it as they had a sexual relationship when they were youth.
I
oh,
could
Like
see
there
there
it.
we
was
go.
supposed to
Yeah,
be that tension there, and
yeah,
she kind of passed it off when kind of like pushed further to like explain this. She was like,
yeah.
they both went to public school. Like, come on.
Okay.
But
That's
I
actually
I
think I would have preferred him to be in this series more. Like I like
Yeah.
that idea of him like popping up. I
yeah,
love
Mhm.
the fact that we were treated to 2 very distinct episodes in Halloween and in the Dark Age, and
Yeah.
it was one was to spread chaos, and the other was for to protect himself.
yeah,
Um, and then you had Band Candy, which was like he was a hired sorcerer, and then a new man. It just like sort of the same idea.
yeah.
So I wish we had more of that because I think he was a really fun character for Giles to play off of that we didn't really get to see Giles outside of the Watcher very often, and I lived for those
In a whole
episodes.
new
Hmm.
series. Yeah, I
Yeah.
do think they draw that could have been a whole new cast, a whole new series connected to the mythology surrounding Buffy, and I think everybody would have bought it.
Yep.
Everybody would have bought into that world. It could have been set in England. I think it would have been amazing. It would have been epic. Um,
Mhm.
Stefan, what was your favorite episode in this season? You can't
You
say the
know,
finale. You can say the finale because, like, that's
I mean, it's everything. It was everything. But I really, really loved the episode of I Only Have Eyes for You. I know it sounds so strange. It was
oh yeah,
just,
yeah, yeah,
it was the moment where you saw where David Boreanaz really brought the character, and I thought it was so clever to have the possession be already in a dead person, so they can continue the story. So the episode is essentially there is a curse because there was a student and a teacher who were in love with one another, and then they died. And the way it works out is usually in order on the anniversary, two people, janitor and teacher, or student and student, will reenact the moment up into the death. But because Angel is already dead, the person who dies gets to save the young man from killing himself in the band room. So powerful, so fun. Yeah. Like, I thought it was such a great episode, really great concept. I love that episode. And apparently it was the episode where Joss Whedon said he could carry his own show. I'm seeing the range. We see him as Angel, now Angelus, now Sympathy. Like, he's like, this works. Let's see what we can do.
I have to say that too, because Angel, David Boreanaz played when he was supposed to be, imbued or whatever, possessed by the female figure. He played it beautifully, in my opinion, even better than Buffy played. I think Angel was able to sort of, take the feminine on a little more significantly.
It was soft, yeah, because it's similar to, like, when we were talking about Ethan Rayne, I always read Ethan as gay because I liked he was very I wouldn't say effeminate, but he had a softness and he's very much like a Disney villain. They all have that characteristic of like a what?
Dude, what is that?
I always read him, but the same. Like, I read him as a chaotic bisexual. Like,
yeah. Like, so, and but it's different. Like, Ethan being Ethan and Angel playing this female actress, it was different. Like, he played the feminine side very well. Like you said, it was really well done.
Yeah, for sure.
I loved it.
But I think that ends that string of episodes, of really, really strong episodes, because we had Killed by Death, which is my personal favorite episode of the whole season.
So good.
Scary. Too scary.
Terrifying.
Terrifying. So it was that one. It was I Only Vice for You, and then it was the travesty that was Go Fish. Which
Go Fish, oh my God.
It was such a filler episode for such a stretch of really powerful, like, rooted in really, like, great character development, good arcs. And then we had this episode that I was like, why is it here? But the best.
I couldn't. What was Go Fish? I'm like,
with
it was Wentworth Miller coming in.
Yes, Wentworth Miller, which I wonder if he gets royalties for the fact that he was always in every single opening credit scene. Like, every season, his, like, hand emerging from his, like, or this, like, the fish hand emerging from his hand, always in every season. I wonder if he gets royalties. I think my least favorite episode, though, has to be Some Assembly Required. It's like,
really? I was going to say, I like the throwback to Frankenstein. I like the throwback to that guy he was the bad guy for building his brother, but he was the good guy. You know what I mean?
He was confused and sad, and I thought it was so sad. His mother was so distant because she was clearly broken by her husband. But I genuinely thought it was her husband that died, because the actor playing that teenager his widow's peak was long gone. Like, that man was in his late 30s, and he's like quarterback first, and they were so messed up when it's like. I was going to say Drusilla. Cordelia felt so sad about the death, and he didn't even know who she was. But it was just, the creepiest part wasn't the doctor, like the kid playing the doctor, the brother, but like the Igor, that creepy little guy that was just totally okay with murdering people. That kid was a lot. And I thought, if he doesn't die, he absolutely has to go to jail. And thankfully, I couldn't remember what happened. I'm like, he goes to jail. Oh, good. Because that kid needs to be punished.
I honestly think, like, I understand what you mean by who played what, but I think the brilliance of it is having the Frankenstein guy, like Dr. Frankenstein, be the brother, and he's just trying to do something to make his mom okay and protect his brother and all of that kind of stuff. And then when you have somebody, I think this is, maybe I'm reading way deep, but when you have somebody choose to do something inherently evil or immoral, but for a good purpose in their head, you can't help but rally around evil and amoral people that are going to help you do it, and then get off on everything that's wrong about it. You can't do a bad thing for a good purpose without drawing in all the bad. And that's why I think it's so brilliant in my head, because I teach politics and society. When I talk about episodes like this, I talk about going to war. I talk
Okay.
about going to war for the wrong reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Not that usually there's very many right, but when you go in for the wrong reasons, it draws in, all hell breaks loose, right? There's no clear goal. There's no clear, and you could think, people could think it's for the right. Well, I'm going to go in and protect so and so or this country or that country, but
Yeah.
with the wrong reasons, and the whole end justifies the, do the ends justify the means? I just think there's such cool big questions there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm definitely reading into that episode,
Well,
but
I just think, again, Jane and Spencer probably stole from the show because they do the same. They do the whole, the brother was the Frankenstein in Once Upon a Time.
oh yeah.
They just,
They must.
again, I just love that show so much. We're going to have to do a recap of that show eventually. But only up to like episode or season 3. Then we're going to just pretend it doesn't exist.
Well, yeah, it does go off the rails a little bit. And then what's her face leaves.
Yeah, and then like what's the point after that? Okay, so I still don't hate, at least up until this point of the series, I still don't hate Xander as much as Stuart does. But he's grating. Like,
Go on.
I just, well, where I'm currently on season 3, and there are moments, at least in season 2 and season 3, where I don't know if Joss Whedon did this on purpose, or he was trying to justify Xander's bad behavior, and it's very well seen in the last episode of the season where he says Willow has a message. We can go into that, but I'll leave it because I think that's our big thing. But yeah, it's just it's getting harder and harder to justify Xander in the early seasons when he's still so immature. It's just when you have a character like Angel and you have a character like Oz, Xander is looking worse. He's looking worse.
But let's reflect on what a 15-year-old boy would have been.
Fair.
He sure as hell wouldn't have been Oz.
No.
and Angel is 241 years old.
He's a matured.
I'm just saying. Y'all boys need a minute. I think he's very representative of sort of an ego-driven, very insecure, very much like, I like that girl. That's the only thing that matters. And that's all that I'm pouring into that, right? Very jealous, very quick to throw people under the bus. And we'll talk about the last episode as well. But I think when you look back at, especially I don't think it's in, and we could talk about this, I don't think it's in boys' nature to be that. I think it's very much conditioned. It's very much socialized. It's very much massaged in. You see expressions of that everywhere else. That's why Oz is so abnormal. Oz isn't the norm. Oz is following around his lead singer who's sleeping with everybody around. He's like, oh, I'm not that into it. But Oz is the outlier.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, we also have but again, Xander lies to Willow, but also in this season, at least he lies to everybody about it. But the relationship between Cordelia and Xander, how do we feel about just that in general? Because it sparks one of the best episodes of season 3, which we'll get into. I just watched it; it was amazing. But how do we feel about the Xander Cordelia relationship? Like, was it a good contrast to Willow and Oz, or should it have even happened? Like, what do we think?
What do you think, Stu?
I think it needed to happen because I think you can't have so many safe couples that are like destined to be together. And I think that Willow and Oz were so perfect for each other, and Buffy and Angel were such a tragic couple to begin with. You needed a comedic relief. And I think that oftentimes Xander's relationships or his romantic partners are the comedic relief of the show, because Xander is also the funny one. Like, you don't go to Willow for like laughs. You go to Willow for the emotional scenes. Most of the time you see Willow in this season, she's crying. Or she's dealing with very heavy things. You're looking at Buffy, she's under an enormous amount of stress from home, from both sides. And Xander's sort of floating, trying to find his place in the group.
Mhm.
And then you have Cordelia that has these snappy comebacks, and it's funny to watch them together because they're like the odd couple.
Mhm.
And it's a kind of like old Hollywood odd couple mixed matched energy that makes it fun to watch. I will say that in this season, I didn't hate Xander. I started disliking Xander episode 1 of season 3 or episode 2 of season 3
True.
when Dead Man's Party.
Right.
I the whole time he was like can't talk about it.
I think it's interesting because you think their energies are different. I think they're the same. I think Cordelia and Xander's energy are very similar. They're very insecure. They're very selfishly driven. They're
Mhm.
all about ego and all about pretense. And Cordelia carries it off more, A, because she's hot, and B, because she's funnier. Like she's wittier than Xander. You more laugh at Xander and you laugh with Cordelia, but that's just because of her sharp tongue,
Yeah.
right? It's not because neither of them are driven from healthy, balanced individuals that want healthy relationships. They're both disasters.
Mhm.
Cordelia, I mean, and Cordelia eventually ends up leaving. But I mean, that takes her a long time to sort of separate the superficial and the money and the I want to be a star and all of those kinds of things. And Xander just deals with it differently. He
Yeah.
still is an insecure guy that's going to be driven by the things he can get. And in my head, I think about, remember when it was the Zeppo's in
Season 3.
I
I
have a
know. I keep
question for
wanting to
you.
mention that one too, and I'm like, it's not the season.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. Do you think that Cordelia would have been able to have such character growth if she didn't feel like the pain of everybody she had to save? Do you think that
What?
that in Angel, when she
Oh,
Oh,
gave the precognition and
yeah.
she could feel them, in the end of season 1 when she is cursed to only feel it, it overwhelms her. Do you think that she would have the character development, she would have become that great character that we love that has multi dimensions if she stayed on Buffy? Because maybe that's my problem with Xander, is he doesn't change,
yeah, it's
It
true.
whereas
doesn't.
Cordelia grows.
I think Cordelia is forced to grow.
Right,
Cordelia's superpower of empathy because she doesn't
right,
have
Which is so funny that that's where they bring her. It's like, what?
so it's forced in her head, right? I mean, you'll see moments of Xander where you think he's going to take these big leaps and this big growth. But then you also remember, I constantly, only because I'm a sucker for this, I constantly remember the family from which he comes.
Right.
The alcoholic, abusive, sleep in the
Yeah.
backyard at Christmas kind of situation.
Yeah.
How are you possibly, and we'll get to that whole disaster when we really see his family, but you
Mm.
can't possibly ever grow from that. So he's constantly looking for other things and other people. And that's why I think he's drawn to Buffy, because Buffy's continuously growing, but she has to have a level of confidence or else she would have died, right
Right.
away. The thing that keeps her alive is her awareness and her self-confidence. He has none of it. How would he
Mhm.
ever have that?
right.
Yeah, and there is exactly that. There's a level of self confidence that he clearly doesn't have, and I think that when you have that mindset, you don't think you can grow, and so you don't. But when you watch everyone else around you become a werewolf, a witch, a slayer, a watcher, a key, and everything, and you're just like, what am I? I'm the one
I'm
who
nothing.
bricks lays brick. I'm nothing. I'm going to
The
be the
window.
yeah. And so
There you
it's
go.
really it's sad, but like it's sad that they thought they had to keep him at that level. Like the writers' room thought, okay, everyone else is growing in such great directions. We've got to have an everyman. It's like, but he could
Yeah,
have been something. That's again, it's my whole theory of he should have been the key. We'll get into it, but I
we'll talk about
just
that.
we'll talk about
I've
it.
already got into it.
I'm
When
gonna get
you're
into it again.
kick out Dawn.
Yeah,
Dawn, get out.
it's gonna be season 6, part 7. My thesis,
We're deep
but
into
like
season.
but just and even in this season it's just I can appreciate that at least everyone right now is at the same level. Season 2 is so great for character development because it was what was lacking so much in season 1 with just monster of the week, but season 2 had such great character development that it's sad that it just kind of stopped with Xander. You know,
Yeah.
we had those backstories, we had those developments, we have Willow trying her hand at magic, and also teaching a computer class, which I still don't think is legal, but whatever.
What the heck was that? Sure, Willow, go take.
Yeah,
Stop it.
you
Sorry,
have a
nurse. Like, that's silly.
what?
It was my favorite thing where she was like, "You're picked on by your peers. You're going to tutor the jocks, and you're going to now teach your peers and grade their papers, and that's going to be a thing we're doing."
Yeah,
Stop it.
The out of supply teachers.
It is the American system. Like,
I mean,
so maybe we're putting too much weight on the way they choose their teachers, because the military's rolling up into Florida next week, I think. They don't know
oh,
I God damn it.
what's happening.
It's a lot.
it's. I also think too, what and off of kind of what Stefan said, I think you really get a whole balance of character growth, but also a lot of the characters that you grow to love, you really fall in love with this season. Like Joyce had some really great moments in season 1 and in season 2. I want to call out Kendra because I think we have to talk about the first Slayer since.
Well, we have to talk about why there's 2, so I think
Right.
we need to talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, yes, there's 2 because she did die, so therefore a new Slayer was called, and then Xander brought her back to life. By mouth to mouth CPR. But I think like you see Kendra and you see Buffy and you see someone who was given away to her watcher because it was a duty, that a supernatural calling that she and her her culture embraced.
Mm-hmm.
And she ends up being weaker than Buffy because Buffy has a team of people. She has a network. She has friends. She has layers. But I think it was such a disservice to Kendra that she died so quickly. We didn't get more of it. Like I wanted to see more of Ethan Rayne. I really did want to sit with Kendra for a bit because you get Kendra, and then in season 3 we get Faith. But we don't sit with Faith very often either. Yeah. We wait until Angel really like you're like I love her in Angel.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting. Kendra represents tradition.
Yeah.
And I think this is the heart of the show, to be honest. Is tradition and do what you're supposed to do, and not just do what you want, but have a true sense of self, and then be confident in that. Because Faith does whatever the hell she wants to as well. Yeah. That's not what I'm talking about. You have tradition where you do what you're told, or, and the contrast is, you develop a strong sense of self-identity and empowerment, and it gets better as you progress. And from that, you make the healthiest, most significant choices that you can possibly make. And I think that is the heart of the show. I think the heart of the show is always, who are you becoming? Not who are you changing into, who are you becoming? Willow becomes who she always was. She just gets better. Right?
Yep. Even when she falls.
All the characters become something. They don't transform into something. And I think that's also incredibly powerful, that if you don't get stopped, especially Spike, and we can't get there, but Spike becomes, right? Through everything he goes through. And he chooses his becoming, which I find so much more impressive. You know, I think that's part of it. So they could have, you're right, Stu, they could have really talked about that, but I have a feeling we think they know the whole arc in the beginning. I don't think they did. And they were on the verge of getting canceled every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
I don't think they planned it for a show that was on the verge of getting canceled every other season. I am very impressed with some level of continuity, because I don't think they could ever think that far ahead, because they only really could save their butts here. And then on a new network, they might get new rules. You got to do this. You got to do this. I don't know all that, ins and outs.
It's because like there are some questions in regards to the Watchers Council, because some things don't add up. But I do like that.
Never adds up.
Never adds up.
No, every season there's a new council. And I'm like, so the rules don't apply.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's interesting how they, because like again, it's you really do feel like it's just Giles and Buffy against the world, and the Scooby Gang against the world. But then you realize there's a whole network of individuals that are supposed to be helping her, and then don't. And then there is such a lack of communication. We'll get into season 3 at next time, but there's a lack of communication that really affects the dynamic at that point. Plus, you have like the Watcher that was lost before season 1, Kendra's Watcher that we never meet.
Yeah.
But I do like the fact that Buffy is sort of the perfect balance between Kendra and Faith. And we'll get into Faith, obviously, because you're right. Kendra is all about duty and tradition, and Faith is about rebellious and anarchy. And then you have Buffy, who has to be the perfect between the two, just the balance between them. Because if she steers one way or the other, she'll lose herself. She'll either lose herself or her friends.
I feel like she's always cognizant of that, right?
Yeah.
I think she's always very much aware of both sides of that fence and very much aware of every single decision. And that's why sometimes she'll say stuff like, if the apocalypse happens, just beat me.
Beat me.
Because if she doesn't put it down for 5 minutes, her head would explode.
Yeah.
So she puts it down literally for 5 minutes, and then she gets called right back into the fray because you can't walk away from that ever. But again, it goes back to becoming. You can't walk away. You can try, you can give it a go, but you can't walk away from who you are and who you're becoming. And the more you try, the messier everything gets and the harder everything gets, right?
Yep.
And I think even with Xander, we see that often because he's constantly trying on new identities because he has no idea of who he is.
And never really will if we were going to really break it down. Because and especially with becoming, because you're right, because Angel was meant to save the world. It's his destiny to help Buffy save the world, and by going against the grain and having Angelus come in and try to ruin it, he messes himself up. We lose him. We legitimately lose him at the end of the season in one of the best moments of the entire show. Like, Becoming episodes 1 and 2.
Let's really talk about the end, because I think the last 2 episodes are amazing. The arc is amazing. Everything about it is amazing, and I think focusing on the fact that it's funny because I've thought a lot about that, and I'm like, because eventually we're going to get to season 5 where Buffy gets to make another choice.
Right?
Is she going to kill the person she loves, or what else can she do? Do you know what I mean? And I think about what she did with Angel and what she had to do. And let's be honest, even Xander saying kick his ass, nothing would have changed about this scenario. Nothing could have changed. When Willow's magic worked is when it was already said and done. He already had opened. There was no choice there. But what I think is interesting is in order for Buffy to save the world, and I don't just mean in season 2, I mean season 7. I mean, if we see the thing as the huge arc, she had to be willing to do what she did for the good of everybody, and she had to figure out how to come back from that. That's part of the arc. You know what I mean? That is when Angel's destiny is to save the world. He had to turn into Angelus. He had to test her. That moment where she catches the sword, which is maybe my favorite single moment, when he's like, who are you left with? You have no friends, no family, no anybody else. And she catches the sword and she said, I got me. And I mean, that moment, and then what happens after, I go, that has to have happened, or else she can't do what she has to do later.
Well, and that's exactly it, because if she didn't sacrifice Angel in that moment, she would have let the world burn. I genuinely do. I think at that point, other than losing herself, she has lost no one else. At this point, she has died. She has come back to life. She has fought. She's seen sacrifice. She's watched her friends. Like, at this point, the only one of her friends who have truly fallen was Kendra. And when she goes to him and she's already lost Angel. So in her mind, she's like, I'm going to take Angelus out. And why do I keep saying it like that? It's like, I've never heard the name before. Angelus. I'm going to take Angelus out. It's only when she sees that Willow is able to restore his soul, and she's looking at him, but she sees what's happening behind him. She's like, she makes that choice. I have to sacrifice. I have
Yep.
to do this. I have to save the world. No one else can do this but me. And from that moment on, every time she has to, you're right. It's just another sort of stepping stone until the big bad. But she's
Mm-hmm.
ready. But I do find it interesting that just to kind of do a quick jump in season 7, she says, I sacrifice Angel to save the world. And Giles said, would you do it again? Like she said, I sacrificed myself for Dawn. She's like, would you do it again, or would you let Dawn go? And there's a pause, because I think
Yeah.
at that point there's just so much loss and so much stress and so much, like, she has to make these choices. I just love that.
Oh,
But
Stefan, she was pausing because she realized how horrible Dawn was, and she's like, Giles, I made a
God,
mistake.
that would. We can't talk about Dawn in it. Listen, it'll
No,
take
no.
up the whole episode. We
I
gotta wait.
just
We gotta wait.
I want to like so as of right now in like the whole Buffy universe, I think what was the most frustrating part about one of the only really frustrating parts for me about the Buffy universe was the Watchers Council, because it was so inconsistent and it changed depending on the want of the series. And I
Yeah.
think that like you had the historics of it. If it was created by it was descended of the Shadow Men, who created the lineage of Slayers, and then for some strange reason it was in Great Britain, because I think it was like very like
Well, that's where all colonization
yeah.
starts, too.
But like it was destroyed later on in the series by Caleb. But you get this like weird sort of, they know stuff, they don't know stuff. They have a special ops team to come and grab Faith, which leads me to believe this happened before. To have an ops team like this, they have all these tests, they have all of these different benchmarks for Buffy and Faith and Kendra to meet. But like, if you think about it, there's one Slayer every like I guess what 5, 6, 10 years, like that is called, and like eventually, like A, how do you find them?
Mm-hmm.
B, like
That's
how do you
all
find
sorts of inconsistencies there, right?
yeah like
Because
Yeah. The
they
witch
pop
is no
up
more than the
everywhere.
council. Yeah.
They pop up everywhere, and that ends up being a problem. And like some of them aren't even popping up at Hellmouth. So I'm like, what's the
No.
point here? I don't get it.
Do you think that maybe the reason that they're, and this is just a fan theory, but maybe the reason they're not in season 1 or 2 is because they're the reason the last Slayer before Buffy died? Maybe their meddling is the reason that she was lost, because we never hear about the Slayer just before Buffy. We know about
Yeah,
Robin's mother, but that's in the
sure.
70s. We know nothing
Yeah.
between 70, like 79 and 96. That
Uh-huh.
entire Slayer is completely lost. Even in the comics, there's nothing about that particular person. So I wonder, maybe the council had too much involvement in that one, and maybe they're the reason. And they're like, we have to step back.
Well, and I
Weird fan
mean,
theory,
and
but what if?
we're gonna get to the Shadow Man, and we're gonna get to all that because I think, my God, the metaphoric arc that's in season 7 is mind-boggling, and I
So good.
understand they had to do a lot of it quick
Hmm.
because right they get canceled. They're like, we got to wrap this puppy up, and I feel
Hmm.
like there was like at least 3 solid seasons in
Hmm.
that jammed in that one season, because really looking at that kind of, where did they get created, how did she get created, and then how did it
The
sprout,
lineage. Hmm.
is
I
insanely.
just I think it's like it's just for me, I 100% agree with both of you. I think it's just that the customs that they have, like for the Tento di Cruciatum, which is a rite of passage when she sees her or lives to see her 18th birthday,
Hmm.
which Giles himself describes as an archaic exercise in cruelty.
Oh, that one. That's it. Is that season 3?
That's I think it's season 3, but
Yeah,
yes, it
because
is season 3.
it must be
But
season 3. Yeah.
it is season 3. But my question is like other Slayers have had to live past 18 to have these like tests put into place, but they never explain like why it is. Like it's supposed to be for the Slayer to rely on her own like physical, like without the
And I
powers. I
think
get that.
the reason is pretty simple. We are going to push her and test her because if she's not cutting it, if she's not good enough, if she can't be a slayer without the power because she's not smart enough, we'd rather her
Yep.
and bring on a new one.
Right.
I think all like they don't get into that, Stu, but I honestly think it is that cut and dry.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to test her. We are going to push all these things on her because and for whatever the asinine test is, if she doesn't pass our test, we would rather her die and another Slayer be called. Maybe it's a better Slayer.
Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a poor choice.
Which is where Kendra comes in. They were training Kendra from birth, essentially. They knew that if Buffy was going to go down, which again, I don't understand how that works. How can you, when you have dozens being called in season 7, how do you know? Like, and then why wasn't anyone really with Faith? Like someone competent? Because if you legitimately had so much trust in Kendra, you should have been at least preparing Faith in advancement of that, But I think again, it's the moments that the council had nothing to do with or had no knowledge of, because bringing it back to the end of season 2, just they didn't even know about Akathla. How do you not know? How is it that Giles, you've got to mute yourself when you do that? How is it? Yeah, the perfect. I love that it's right through. That sword is right. Can you pull it out or no? Do you have the power?
I don't want to.
Oh,
who knows what's going to happen? Are you insane?
Put it back.
I'm sorry.
Angel somewhere. Div Boreanaz somewhere is like, he's like clutching his chest. Like it's time.
He's clutching something else.
Okay, we're not going to talk about Div Boreanaz in that context. Yeah, his pictures. Just, I think when I was, because this aired in what, 98? I was 13, and I remember watching her 97, excuse me. So I was 12.
Actually, the finale would have been 98. You're right.
So yes, it would have been 12. I remember I must have watched that. I must have worn out my tape. I remember when I finally got them. I saved all my money to buy the series on the seasons on DVD when I had the chance. My little Best Buy. And I remember just watching that over and over again because it was so powerful and so sad and so heartbreaking that she finally gets him back, but it was just not soon enough, and then she has to make that sacrifice. And when she's like, and when she
I was 32. I don't know why we're playing this game. That's not nice to me. But I was 16 or 17, but still, screw you both.
But when she says close your eyes, because he's so confused, like she kisses him. But that really bothered me about that episode too. And I realized I was talking to Kai about this and not you guys, because at one point I'm like, I swear I've already said this. It really irks me that the demon that lay itself in the corpse of this human disappears when the soul comes back, and now the person that has nothing to do with the incidences and the attacks from that demon now has to amend for, like, it's essentially the shell that was running around, because he knows no idea what's going on, but the memories will start flooding him because it was his body, it was his mind, but he wasn't there. So I know that when a vampire takes over, it amplifies the worst parts of you. It's such a shame that, like, he is being tortured and punished for decades for something he technically didn't do. And then when he comes back and he's like, where are we? What's happening? I don't understand. I'm so confused. And she sees him, and it's so just shattering that she's like, he's back, and now he has to go again, and he has to suffer once again for these.
Well, an eternity, however long he's in that.
Oh God. Or does he come back? We'll never know.
Before we wrap up this part of season 2, I want to ask a question. Why do you think, and this is more of a general Buffy question, why do you think that they decided it just is one Slayer? Think about this for a second. The whole friggin' world of evil. We have moths, we have mayors turning into snakes, we have hordes of vampires, we have all of this evil. Why do you think they chose to say one girl? And they say one girl, by the way, which is very purposeful, because it's not a woman. Why do you think one girl? What do you think, I guess, the metaphoric reason or the underpinning of one? Why do you think that is?
Stuart?
You have any idea?
First of all, Joanna, stop swinging around the sword of a virtuous knight and put it back in Akathla.
Sorry.
I think it was
This little
one
vacuum starts like coming out of your hand. You're like, oh.
I honestly,
if I had an effect, I'd put it on the.
I honestly think that it had to be one girl because it creates a sense of crushing responsibility. I think if there were a team of people around the world, I think that the sense of the stakes would not be as high.
Right.
It's one person like standing in the way of the armies of darkness, and is responsible for the world. And I think that the fact they say girl is because the term girl is often seen as very weak and very meek, and at least historically, and that like that whole thing, she alone will fight with the vampires, the demons, and the forces of darkness. She is the slayer. I think is so powerful because it's basically saying like this thing, this teenage girl or a preteen like received this gift, this super strength, this uh, precognitive dreams, this ability to save people and impact real change in the world and like battle these demons, is doing it out of obligation, out of destiny.
Mm-hmm.
That it wasn't something that she chose; it was something that was forced upon her.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you kind of get into the whole Spider-Man, like with great power comes great responsibility. And I think if you're a team of people, there's not the same amount of stakes. You can be like, I can take a vacation. She says it when she's talking about Kendra. I'm going to go to Disneyland.
You're gonna go to Disneyland.
Yeah. Because she doesn't get a break. There's no break. So I think when Stefan brings up season 7, she's so shell-shocked, so drained, so empty and broken that she's like, I don't know if I make the same decisions because that person doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Stefan, what do you think? Why the one?
I guess I have to kind of go with Stuart on that. I think there is this sense of duty and responsibility when you are the only person that can do what she does. And the good thing is, I think that if like the Scooby Gang were all slayers, there would be such discord. There would be such.
Well, we see the discord come,
Yeah, but each one of them has a very important role to play. But we need a leader. Like there's always one king of a region, always one queen of a region. That's why they don't have like a court. Otherwise, it would just be nonstop. Like, what are we gonna do? It's just everyone fighting about what happens next. I think it's strong. It's a strong message that is one girl in all the world because we're so used to seeing such this toxic masculinity, sort of macho man who comes in and saves the day. But it could literally be, it should be, and I like the fact that it is a woman that comes and saves the day because I think that there's a level of courage and strength that your Superman can't have, that doesn't have. And yeah, I if it was a group, I don't think they would have the same dynamic. I mean, we see what happens with the Justice League when everyone has the same amount of power, but they all think differently. Chaos. When it's one person with all this burden to share, one person with all the power. I mean, she chose family, she chose friends, she chose her Scooby Gang to at least balance it out, which is why she wins, which is why she has the strength that others didn't.
Here's
my
well, it's not a depressing take. I just think it's a very sociological take. I actually, do you guys know there's a course at U of T that is about Buffy?
Yeah,
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Anyways, I'd like to even see the syllabus, but here's what I think. And it's not just talking about why he chose a woman, and all those points that you guys said make perfect sense and are incredibly powerful. But women, if we're talking about it sociologically, they have to fight alone because we're taught to compete. Women have been disempowered by dividing and conquering forever.
Mm-hmm.
If we talk about patriarchy and we talk about the way that women have been, and you see it now even in voting, even in the way that feminist groups will tear each other apart. Guys don't have to do a damn thing. They're going to sit at the back of the room. Hillary Clinton didn't lose because guys didn't like her.
Mm-hmm.
Hillary Clinton lost because women thought she was too hard, because they didn't like her suits, because they took him back, because that's why. And when I look at Buffy, the triumph of Buffy is when there's not just one.
Mm-hmm.
Is when she chooses. I hate to really ruin season 7 for anybody, and I'll
Beep.
try not to. When she chooses to change the world, and the way she changes the world, she doesn't save it, she shares it.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, and I have no idea if Joss, heaven help us, had any forethought about that particular theme, but honestly, I think that is the power of Buffy. I think if I was going to, that is the arc, whether he intended it to be or not. And the whole shadow men and who gets to manipulate and who gets to make that choice and who created the dynamic in the first place is still incredibly telling. Because the only way you win, finally, like in the end, is by saying, it's not just me. You have a choice. Everybody else has a choice. So I'm handing it over. In the history of anybody who has ever said, I have all of this power here, right?
Yeah.
Here. And I think for women, especially because men have an ability, it's funny, I'm thinking Avengers when you're talking Justice League, men have this ability, this camaraderie. They're taught very young, and in many, many ways, your boys come first.
Yeah.
You're going to sleep with your girlfriend. You're going to sleep with okay, I'm going to punch you in the face, then we're going to be done with it. You know what I mean? Like, we might battle for who gets to be at the top dog at any given moment, but at the end of the day, I got your back because we're guys. I got you, and that kind of plays out. Whereas in Buffy, and for women, I think it's this incredible sort of flip of that to understand where true power lies, where true community lies, and changing all of that socialization.
It's also kind of a slap in the face. I
You
mean,
teach that course at UFT?
I'm going to sign up.
it's kind of a slap in the face too. If you think about it, the men, the shadow men just thought she was expendable. Like one girl is just, it's one girl, losing one girl is better than losing 3 men is essentially what they were saying. But
Absolutely.
what we realize is that they're weak, and they're weak men. And Buffy gets to choose. Yes. And Buffy makes a choice, and she says, we're not going to be weak. We're strong. We're stronger than you ever were. And I'm going to prove it to you. And I also love that, because she came to that place of empathy and of just maturity. And it just, I love the show.
And I think we'll cover that in the seasons to come. Stu, any last thoughts of season 2?
I think it's one of the strongest seasons of Buffy. And I honestly think too that, like, what I loved most about it was the fact that it really pushed character growth. And I think the one thing this season had that I find the other seasons lacked in a way, other than season 6, which is pretty much like a single arc, was there was one big bad the entire time. Like it was layered on top of it. Yes, we had Monsters of the Week, but there was one continuous storyline throughout that you could follow. And the stakes were so high. It was the stakes within the personal life, and you cared about all the characters. Like, you felt bad for everyone. And I think that it's, whereas season 1 was like them testing a couple of things out and being this kind of underdog, I think season 2 is where they really, really found their legs. And they started really putting roots down into great foundational work that served them into season 3 and a weaker season 4, and then kind of like back into season 5 and 6.
Yeah. Oh yeah, season 4 was a bit. It's bad. Stefan, last thoughts.
It is such a powerful exceeding expectation season with great character development and such a emotion like roller coaster. It is so well done, and it really does start the flames of Willow's magic, of the relationship with Angel and Buffy, with Giles being more than just a watcher, with the connection between Joyce and Buffy, and the relationship that'll continue on through the series. Spike, just so much happens in the season, and it is so incredibly well done, that I just, yeah, it's absolutely one of my favorites.
Fantastic. And on that note, thank you guys so much. And we will be back next week, same bat time, same bat station, with season 3 of Buffy.
So good.
Thank you guys so much. Have a great night, guys. We will see you next week.
Bye.
Dismissed.